A treasure map? A mad scientist on a bicycle? And who the hell are the Waldos? It's 420, Lewis. Let's blaze it. Hello, Internet, and welcome to OnAirEncyclopedia. Our normal posting days were planned to be Saturdays, but with today being Greener Than Earth Day, we thought it would be perfect to go through the history of 420 and its lesser-known sister holiday, Bicycle Day, which falls one day prior and was made famous by being the day LSD was first ever taken, and the story's a trip. Considered to be the most widespread counterculture holiday, 420 has become notoriously known as a day for rolling cones, packing bowls, and getting stoned, and may be the only day Seth Rogen and James Franco see any more revenue rolling in from Pineapple Express. I know I've known a 420 even before the devil's lettuce entered my life, let alone post-freshman year when it became implemented as Christmas in April for me, so I assume there had to be a wild story to it, and there is. Brock, are you familiar with the origin of 420?
I know that it either came from kids hanging out or police. And then we looked it up a little bit before this, and then there's a bunch of crazy, nuts-ass theories of where it came from. I think the more believable one is cops. Apparently it's from those kids.
Yeah, so apparently the story goes, in 1971, 5 high school students in San Rafael, California used the term 420 in connection with a plan to search for an abandoned cannabis crop, based on a treasure map made by the grower, calling themselves the Waldos because of their typical hangout spot was a wall outside the school. The 5 students were Steve Capper, Dave Reddix, Jeffrey Knoll, Larry Schwartz, and Mark Gravich. They designated the Louis Pasteur statue on the grounds of San Rafael High School as their meeting place and 4:20 p.m. as their meeting time. The Waldos referred to this plan with the phrase 420 Louis. After several failed attempts to find the crop, the group eventually shortened their phrase to 420, which ultimately evolved into a code word for the teens' use of the teens used to refer to consuming cannabis. Stephen Hager of High Times was responsible for popularizing the story of the Waldos. The first High Times mention of 420 smoking and a 420 holiday appeared in May 1991, and the connection to the Waldos appeared in December 1998. Hager attributed the early spread of the phrase to Grateful Dead followers after Waldo Reddix became a roadie for the Grateful Dead's bassist Phil Lesh and called for 4:20 p.m. to be socially accepted time of day to smoke and consume cannabis. That's kind of crazy. So one of the dudes who was actually in the group that started the whole 420 code word ended up being a roadie for Phil Lesh of the Grateful Dead. That's kind of fucking crazy. Oh my god, yeah, just imagine. Like, first of all, I want to know where this treasure map came from. How the fuck did these kids end up with a treasure map from a weed grower? Like, to a secret weed farm? Like, does that map even exist today still? Like, where is that map, if not the fucking Smithsonian?
There's something that I read recently. I assume it's in the Cannabidation, the world's only immersive cannabis museum.
Yeah, from everything that I've read, it seems that the term 420 actually became popularized during times of protest, and the day 420 became a celebrated day to gather, smoke weed, and to basically use the gathered consumption as a form of protest. Like, for example, in Australia, they have an event called the 420 Picnic, which is basically just where it's like a music festival, except the headliner is marijuana. Like, fucking everybody just gets together in a giant field, basically, and it's just a bunch of food and people fucking smoking weed together. Over in Australia, they had the first one in 2019. They were supposed to do it again in 2020, but, well, the world went to shit. They also hold Who Are We Hurting events in Australia, where it's them getting together to do the same thing they do on the 420 Picnic, except in the streets of Australia. And it's happened a couple different times, these Who Are We Hurting protests,
Right.
to basically say fucking...
I assume, are they pretty strict on weed over there?
I don't know. Let's find out.
If they're still doing that, probably definitely not.
The personal cannabis use bill was passed on the 25th of September 2019. New laws came into effect on 31st of January 2020. Possession of small amounts of cannabis in one or two plants remains an offense under the Drugs of Dependence Act. However, the Act creates exceptions for persons aged over the age of 18. Allowing for possession of up to 50 grams of dry material, 150 grams of wet material, and cultivation of 2 plants per individual and up to 4 plants per household. So, not terribly strict. How does that compare to Illinois' laws?
Is that for all of Australia?
I would assume so.
The fact that you can own plants is already better than here in the States. Well, it's up to the states, not a whole thing.
So what about in Illinois?
Plants, I think, if you have a medical card. If you don't have a medical card, you can't grow. You can have up to...
Even though it's recreational here? Really?
I want you to grow, make money off of it, and then you won't need to go to their fucking shitty dispensary.
Yeah.
Illinois, your weed tax suck, ruining a good thing, just like everyone knew it would. I'd rather have it legal. You guys ruin it, and I'm still gonna buy it off the streets.
Yeah, because then at least the people who are selling it to us down the fucking chain aren't paying ridiculous prices at the top, so by the time it gets to us, we're not paying $20 a gram again. Like, or was that just because, like, we were high schoolers that we had to pay $20 a gram? Or was that just, like, how it was back then? Because
everybody and their mom was selling 20 a gram. Finding 15 was fucking cool, but it was garbage.
Yeah. Dude, do you remember? Yeah, like fucking reg.
Yeah,
bro. I remember.
I know reg is dirty.
I remember buying weed used to be such a fucking experience because it was like, all right, so like,
there was so much weight.
You can spend this much money and you can get about, you know, fucking an ounce of fucking this shit that'll keep you high for 10 seconds, or you can get some of these mids, or some of these hybrids, or fucking loud. Loud is a word that I have not heard used to describe marijuana since like sophomore fucking year, bro. I remember back in the day it was like, I only smoke loud, bro. People would walk around with loud on their fucking hoodies and shit.
That's stupid.
I wanted one of those hoodies so bad too.
In Hazy, there was like loud would be like 25 a gram, and then like shit weed would be like 15 or 20. I feel like you definitely had more of a selection and a variety around here. Even in Robinson, there was more options. Everybody there is doing drugs. I'd say not the fun kind, but then they'd argue with me.
Not the 420 friendly drugs.
And dude, everybody there likes meth. How's it going, all the people that don't talk to me anymore from Robinson? How's it going staying there? Remember all those dreams you had of getting out of that shit town and not wanting to become part of it? Look at you, just fucking seeping into the pavement. We know how you're doing there at 35.
Can't have a podcast when you're on meth.
Yeah, dude, all your money's going to meth, bro. Can't run Robinson, bro. You can't conquer the world and spread bullshit whenever you're fucking never getting out of that town. The only time you leave that town is to go get drugs. Shit, dude. The school system sucks there. Everybody's fucking creepy and weird as fuck behind the scenes. Everybody's in your fucking business and everyone's on drugs. Cops are fucking annoying. And everybody and their mom that sells drugs there thinks they run that shit.
Yeah, man. And see, I don't think all drugs should be legal. For marijuana to be where it's at, because there's famous actor Paul Birch. He was in shows like Bonanza, Gunsmoke, Breaking Point. The dude's IMDb page has like 143 credits on it. He's quoted as saying, 420 is half celebration and a half call to action. He goes on to say that, Paul Birch goes on to say that it is a global movement and suggests that one cannot stop events like these. Talking about 420 as a whole, for everything that it stands for, and not just talking about, just 420, but marijuana in general, and people being told they can't do something that shows no adverse side effects. It shows no debilitation of life. Might make you a little tired, a little lazy, a little hungry here and there, but those aren't things that social media's not doing to us, fucking TV's not doing to us, everything. We live in a convenient state now, living here in America. It's all convenience all the time. So when it comes to the negative side effects of cannabis, like, there's paranoia, but just a couple months ago, the streets were burning.
Well, they still are.
Now we're at a point where...
No, they're doing it again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They're doing it again. We shouldn't even talk about that. I'll fucking start talking. Oh, man.
We can't. we can't cross that barrier, man.
Yeah, they're on fire.
Not yet. We gotta wait to see how these views start coming in from Facebook. That's gonna bring in a whole crowd of people if it goes the way I think it's gonna go.
But no, on the talking about the effects of pot, we're still pretty positive. I have stomach problems. People are gonna fucking not like that. People are not gonna like that because they love the idea that there's zero downside to smoking pot. There's no long-term effects. And then they're also gonna immediately be scared and try to deny it, even if it's true, just because that's what I have a problem with. It's like, I don't want to think that it's from pot, because if I do, that gives somebody ammo to tell me it's bad.
Yeah.
And then they can make it illegal. But it fucking hurts. It's not fun.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people know that. One of our friends made a post on Facebook talking about, there's no downside to weed, dude, fuck off. It's like, anybody who says that's fucking lying. And I was like, and I wanted to send a picture of the description of what it's called, because I don't even know what it's called. But I was like, I don't know, man. I am 100% sure this is for me smoking pot. And let me tell you something. It fucking hurts. And it's the craziest shit ever, because I'm pretty sure, that's a type of addiction. Like, if I don't smoke pot, my stomach fucking hurts so bad. That's what I was thinking. I was like, so
cannabinoid hypermesis syndrome is what it's called. And we're gonna shine some awareness on this.
It pretty much you can read the description, but in my description, it happens to me when I wake up in the morning, and it does everything. It does the exact opposite of anything you're using cannabis for. Like, it causes that. Appetite out the window. You're in pain. You know you need to eat, but you can't. Like, it hurts, and then by the time you make food, you look at it and you're like, that's gross, but I'm hungry. And then it fucking sucks, and it's just constant pain.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
I can attest. I live with you.
It's fucking insane. I just wake up and gag constantly.
Yeah, I've seen you in the mornings. Pretty more often than not. It's when you first wake up. It's a whole lot of gagging on just being awake. That's how I would put observing that.
It's been happening since fucking.
So whenever you do smoke weed, is it like
it takes a minute?
Yeah, so
I'll have you read that, and it says that it causes the opposite effects when you smoke, because the receptors in your brain, weed can help with nausea and stuff like that. But whenever I first smoke in the morning, it actually causes the opposite effect, and it'll enhance nausea and fucking shit like that, stomach pain. Like, it'll make it worse, because it doesn't. The receptors in my brain don't pick up that. It reads it as wrong until I smoke enough, and then it's like, oh yeah, we're cool. The only way to stop it is fucking to stop smoking, which is painful. And I don't know how long it's going to be painful for, because this is new stuff to my knowledge. Like, I'm a big advocate for pot, and I have been, since I first smoked. And I've never heard of it until
the first words to this paragraph are a newly recognized condition.
Yeah, and I didn't know it, but the person I lived with in Michigan, he talked to me about it because we used to live together, and we would talk about it, and he's like, I've read some stuff about that. He's like, it's a thing that people have, but no one has an answer for. And now this comes out, and it's like, oh shit, it's a real fucking thing. Imagine how many other people have this that they don't know, because pot's been illegal for so long, so you can't do long-term tests on it, because the FDA and fucking not state government, the opposite.
Federal government?
Yeah, federally it was illegal. So they weren't able to do tests on it, because you weren't able to have it. I don't know. It just stopped. It just made experiments harder to do. You had to have a bunch more stuff. It had to be way more controlled.
Yeah, it's kind of like how LSD right now is really, really hard to experiment with.
Yeah, once they decriminalize it, they'll be able to find out a bunch of stuff. But yeah, it fucking sucks. It's painful a lot.
Yeah, alright, I'm going to read you a portion of this article basically explaining in medical term what we were just talking about. It's on the Southwestern Vermont Healthcare website. And it reads, marijuana-related stomach disorder on the rise. A newly recognized condition is showing up more and more in our local emergency department. Patients come in with severe nausea and vomiting for several days. Often they report multiple prior episodes over months or even years. The symptoms include unremitting pain in the upper abdomen, persistent nausea and vomiting, and a hot shower or bath is the only thing that brings them relief. The length of these symptoms is variable but can last for up to a week at a time and be completely disabling. In the past, we had a poor understanding of what caused these symptoms and how to treat them because they tended to be very resistant to even the most potent pain and nausea medications we have. We would direct our evaluation to pursue the most common and serious diagnoses and often come up empty-handed. We would test for problems with stomach, liver, gallbladder, pancreas, and bowels, test for pregnancy, and often get CT scans in an effort to make a diagnosis. For years, patients would be tentatively diagnosed with cyclical vomiting disorder, irritable bowel, gastroparesis, or gastritis due to our poor understanding of this disease entity. Patients would often have to come to the ER several times during an episode for hydration and electrolyte replacement due to the severity of the symptoms. The next step would be a trip to the gastroenterologist. I don't know how to say that word, although they usually had a little success in diagnosing the problem. Now we understand that for many people presenting with these patterns of symptoms that the cause is related to cannabis use, or more specifically, high levels of the tetrahydrocannabinoid molecule in cannabis products. So that basically just clarifies everything that you were just saying and your experience, you know? And it's kind of crazy. That really is like a minor withdrawal syndrome. Like,
yeah.
Like what else would you call it?
That's not. I don't know. I don't know if that's what it is though, because I don't know, because even when you intake it, it's just bouncing off the receptors.
Yeah.
So, but you're still using. So, and I don't know if it's just I don't know.
Yeah, and it says it's due to high levels of tetrahydrocannabinoids. So I feel like to obtain this, you would have to be an avid pot smoker, which I'm sure you can definitely say you were during your teenage years. Like, I know we were down here, like, yeah, oh yeah. So that alone, I mean, just think about how many people, and that's what's crazier is, like, with the way that teenagers are nowadays, who are becoming these young adults, who will eventually become adults, things are so much easier for us to get, I feel, than it was for, like, our parents, or even not our parents, but most likely our grandparents, you know? So for our generation, it felt like anything illicit that I wanted, I could have at any given point. If I wanted cigarettes, I could get cigarettes. If I wanted weed, I could get weed. If I wanted alcohol, I could get alcohol. You know, it just mattered if I had the money, and after that, it was just finding someone or finding the right situation, you know? And, like, how many of us, with our avid use of dabs even, right, you know, because that's a fairly modern.
Well, this says weekly cannabis use is generally required for the syndrome to occur. So even if you use it weekly,
yeah,
does that mean all week or once a week?
Weekly use, I don't know, because you get paid weekly, but you only get that once. So I don't know. I feel like that's like their bare minimal for what this is they're like, well, we had, you know, a couple cases where it was weekly that these people said that they were smoking, and they just so happened to fall in the same category. Because with this being new, because for years, like this article is Southwestern Vermont Healthcare, the first article to pop up, and it wasn't posted until July 29th, 2020. Like, this wasn't posted until last year, almost a year ago, but that's still fairly new studies. I'd say these studies have probably been going on for probably 4 to 5 years at this point, at most, with it being newly recognized still on July 29, 2020. Pretty soon, like, we could all be waking up in the mornings with stomach pains and fucking gastritis due to tetrahydrocannabinoids.
So I'd say 18 to 21.
Yeah. I started at 13.
If my kid decided to, it'd be like, but I mean, I'm not going to be able to stop him from was able to keep me from smoking.
Yeah. See, man, and I think that's where my big issue with censorship comes into play. is it's putting a red button in front of somebody. You put a red button in front of somebody and you tell them that they can't push it. They can do anything else, but they cannot touch that red button. At some point, they're going to get bored and they're going to want to push that red button. If you sit there and you spend all of your time telling your kids what they can't do, they can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that, eventually they're going to turn around and they're going to do that. Except now when they're doing it, it's going to be hidden from you 10 times more because they know that you said they couldn't. If you push the red button and nobody's looking, did you even really push the button? You know, and that was my mindset when I was a teenager. I was running around the streets of Jacksonville fucking smoking weed and drinking almost every day. I went to school hungover so many times.
Right.
So many. I went to school, I don't know if I can say that, but I don't know.
Drunk?
Yeah, I went to school drunk.
There's a lot of people.
I knew kids that were going to school off of like 4 Xanax bars a day. And that's a day, bro. Like, I haven't even taken 4 Xanax bars in my entire life. Like,
This guy's fucking bomb. Oh my god, I love popping Xannies. Last week, but I'm still going. I just have her script now.
my favorite rapper is Lil Xan because I can relate to him so much because every time I see his name on my phone, it reminds me of when I'm looking at my mom's pill bottles that I'm stealing from. It's all worth it, really, because, I mean, I feel good 6 nights out of the week, but my mom, 1 month out of every 3, yeah, she just has a really bad couple weeks, and I just think she's being a bitch, honestly. She's been through 3 Kevins in the last 6 months.
They all have to be What's your type? Xanax. I mean, like a guy. Yep. Same answer.
Man, sometimes I think about, like, all the shit I did in high school, and like, I look back as a young adult, I'm like, yeah, I could have turned out way worse. Never did heroin.
Yeah, or like, you can smoke it, but like, no, it's needles.
Man,
If I keep it as needles, then I'm not gonna do it.
Honestly, heroin's one of those things I don't ever even want to be in the same room as at any given point in my life.
Like how little it takes to die.
Yeah.
I think if you could microdose heroin, I'd try it.
And like, it's so addicting.
But like beer, not like alcohol makes me sleep. Weed makes me sleep. So like downers are just like, it's just gonna make me sleep. I'm gonna die.
Yeah. And that's the craziest part about heroin is like, people can literally die from that. 3 days later, get out of the hospital to go buy more heroin. Like, Nikki Sixx. Like, it's same thing goes for meth, and honestly, like cocaine. If you're not careful with yourself, and addictive personalities are killer for people. I don't know. I feel like eventually we're gonna work into a state where I want to see drug use go from being a crime to being outlet for support. Yeah, I worded that real wrong, but
a crutch?
No. Instead of people getting locked away for drugs, I want to see people get locked away in rehab. I heard somewhere, I don't know much about rehab, but I'm pretty sure for most rehabs, to even get in, you have to be willing to do it.
Hey, a lot of them you can leave on your own. So if you put in there, you can just leave. So you have to anyway.
Yeah. And see, what I want to see is instead of prisons being chock full of drug users.
You can't force a drug addict to quit using drugs. So forcing people into rehab doesn't work. That's why you have to want it. You can't force a drug addict to quit doing drugs.
That's the problem.
They either find God or they do it on their own. And that's addiction. That's just what addiction does. Like, there's nothing that you could do to that person to make them stop. They don't care. They don't give a shit. They already see what it's doing to their family, and it's causing them to do more. So they have to get tired of their own shit. You can talk to them all you want, and it's not gonna it's not going to do anything. And forcing them into it's going to make it worse. I'm like that. I don't know. That's why that's the only reason why I can think of why they already don't force drug addicts. Because you can't. They're going to get nowhere. You can keep them in there and make them go through withdrawals, but that's, I don't know. That just seems really cruel. It's like, oh, okay, well, you're addicted. Well, we're going to make you stay in this padded room. Don't worry. We'll make sure you don't die. And this is going to suck ass, but you'll thank us later. It's like, that could do more mental damage than what they're already going through, especially if they're already...
Yeah, but imagine they're going through those same withdrawals, but now they're in prison.
Yeah, I don't know if that'd be good mentally.
Yeah, if it's terrible for you to be in rehab going through withdrawals and fighting your own addiction, I can't imagine how terrible it is to fight your own addiction, go through withdrawals, and your only thing that you ever did wrong in your life was get addicted to a drug. Yeah, that's a pretty bad thing.
Well, but if you're addicted and you're getting busted and it's a problem enough, because like that's the thing about addiction, people only see it when it gets really bad.
Yeah,
like nobody, like they're doing it for years before that.
Yeah,
like I don't know, I just don't think that that's a good idea. I think someone into that, I don't know,
and I just don't think prison's the answer. I don't think prison's the answer for drug addicts. I think maybe a type of prison, find alternative. How do you mix a rehab and a prison? Well, what's a good cross between rehab and a prison? I don't even think that exists yet.
That's what rehab is, an alternative prison.
Yeah.
That's why they have set, okay, so it's like prison. You have a set schedule, you have to do things, and this and that, but you also have to stay there and you're required to be there, okay? And on a rehab, you're free to go. That's what's inviting about rehab to addicts. Like, you can choose to go. And that's also, like, addiction's so fucking crazy. Like, you have to want to do it. There's no way someone could make you, except for cut you off, and then at which case you could just die. I don't know. Like, that just seems weird.
Yeah, but if you were in a medical condition with trained professionals.
Okay, is it their choice? Okay, do you agree? Okay, how do you feel about assisted suicide? Do you think you should be in charge of when you leave this earth?
Oh God, no.
No? You don't think so?
No.
God, I do. You don't think it should... Well, it's not illegal to
assisted suicide is a scary idea.
No. Well, it's also, like, not by a person, by the way. I know that's...
Yeah, no, it's like lethal injection or...
choose to.
Yeah.
You can choose to. Yeah. Why shouldn't somebody have that right? That's weird. I honestly thought you'd, like, agree on that.
I used to have a lot of strong feelings about assisted suicide. Now I'm not so sure. Because, I don't know.
That's like the ultimate human right, in my opinion. It's like you don't get to choose whether or not you...
That really is like the ultimate human right.
One thing you could choose, it's when you leave.
Okay, but
that's what I was getting at.
When do you get to choose that?
What I was getting at...
Can a 5-year-old choose?
Absolutely not. No, I'm pretty sure where it's legal, you have to be like over... I don't know if this is true. At least over the age of 21. At least. For that to even come into question. Like, and I'm pretty sure they can deny you. But I mean, it's kind of like that. Okay, what I was getting to is like, okay, it's kind of like taking your own life. Like, if you're gonna do it, you're gonna do it, and no one's gonna fucking stop you. You know why? Because it's your fucking choice. At the end of the day, it's all on you. It's the same way as being a drug addict. That's why you have to force people into interventions. Like, almost all of them don't care. And if they do want help, and they finally admit it, then they want the help. And then you couldn't make someone understand how bad what they're doing is to themselves, because they don't fucking care. And they feel a lot worse than what they're doing all the time they feel a lot less worse at doing what they're doing all the time than the pain they're gonna get from going into withdrawals and like actually dealing with shit. So it's like, you're not gonna get the person that you couldn't force them to go into rehab, and I don't think you could force somebody not to off themselves. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I also feel like
being mean and assertive in either situation is just gonna make it worse.
I feel like saying you can't force somebody to get clean, just like there has to be a point. Okay, so there's basically two options at this point. You can either find a higher power or be your higher power. You know? And
I don't think you could force that into someone.
Yeah, and so like, does that mean that there are just people out there that are drowning so far in their own addiction that they have no option anymore? Because imagine there are people.
It's kind of like being depressed. A lot of people don't end up choosing to be addicted. Like I definitely don't think addiction is a disease. I think the chemicals that cause addiction is we could talk about if it's a disease or not, but it's all up to a choice. But like, I think it was connecting it to depression. Like, you couldn't just walk up to someone and be like, "Hey, don't be depressed anymore." Like, if I just walked up to you and you'd be like, "What's up? What's up?" And then all this stuff's going on, and you're just like, "Oh, I'm just sad." I was like, "Well, just don't be anymore." It's like, man, I wish I could get out of putting you on blast, Chief. Nobody can fucking fix the fact that somebody's addicted but them. That's my best connection to that, though. Nobody can you couldn't force anybody to not be the way they're feeling, and like. It's because it's all chemical.
I don't think society will ever be progressed enough for progression.
Progression is
all the time.
Yeah, moving slowly. But going back to the assisted suicide thing, it's legal in Oregon and Vermont, but only in cases of terminally ill, like people, and you have to get like doctor stuff, shit like that. In the Netherlands, though, both euthanasia and assisted suicide are legal. If the patient is enduring unbearable suffering and there is no prospect of improvement, anyone from the age of 12 can request this, but parental consent is required if a child is under 16. There's a number of checks and balances, including the doctors must consult with at least one other independent doctor on whether the patient meets this necessary criteria. Belgium, Luxembourg, Canada, and Colombia also allow both euthanasia and assisted suicide, although there are differences. For example, only terminally ill patients can request it in Colombia, while Belgium has no age restriction for children, although they must have a terminal.
Fucking 12?
Yeah.
Oh 12 my god. Request it. Okay, so just with the philosophy of assisted suicide involved, of having that almost knowing what day you'll die effect of like, yeah, here's your plan. We are going to go through with this procedure to end your life in 3 months. You got 3 months before you can. Before that decision has any true weight to it. Then you live your next 3 months of your life, knowing that you have this planned day, and that's the day it's going to happen to you. And you could, within the next week, things could be starting to get better. You still have that plan in the back of your mind, but at least your last little bit of life's gonna be good. And then a couple more weeks go by, and that date's still coming up, but now things are going pretty okay. You're just kind of living. You're trying to do all these things because you know what's coming. That sort of mindset, I could see where it would be helpful. And if there was, it's the same thing for abortion, I want to say. Not that suicide and abortion are anything like each other, but in the instance of if we didn't have legal abortions, people would just be doing it with a coat hanger at home. And I hope that's not too harsh to say, but it's true. If there was an assisted treatment for it, I could see within direct guidelines how that could be helpful in certain case scenarios, and even could almost be therapeutic for people, because it would give the time that they have meaning, and maybe within that meaning they could find, like we were talking about earlier, that higher being within themselves. 12 years old?
Yeah, so New Zealand's getting the fucking age wrong, in my opinion, and Canada's fucking getting the amount of time wrong.
Okay,
you know how many days
like euthanasia?
You know how many days the waiting period is for Canada? Granted, they only do it for the terminally ill.
And then is that for the euthanasia?
Yeah, the assisted. Yeah. Well, it's
Are euthanasia and assisted suicide put into the same category?
There's differences.
Because euthanasia is the medical practice of ending one's life to end suffering or pain.
Yeah, that'd be like for the.
But that would be more for like somebody lying on their deathbed.
Right. Canada's wait period is only 10 days.
10 days? That's not long enough. A month at least.
Euthanasia is the act of intentionally ending the life to relieve suffering.
Your landlords?
That injection administered by a doctor. And then assisted suicide is intentionally helping another person to kill themselves. It is known as assisted suicide. Among sedatives, which to end their life, or buying them a ticket to Switzerland, where assisted suicide is legal.
Your landlord legally has to give you 30 days to prepare before they can kick you out.
Right.
In Canada, only takes 10 to die. That's fucked up.
It is for only the 10 days.
Oh, then that must be for the euthanasia.
I'm pretty sure euthanasia.
And
the other one in the States, I think.
Yeah, and euthanasia makes sense, because that's not as serious. That's not even truly suicide. Well, it's the practice of intentionally ending life. Does that include your own, or is that the choice for somebody else? Or does it matter? Would it be the same way either way? Like, is the technical term for assisted suicide euthanasia?
What if one of the requirements...
Does it? Because it would totally fall into that category.
I guess every time I looked up the difference and it gave me...
Read that off.
I already did. I read the first definition of euthanasia, and then I read assisted suicide.
Oh, okay.
Looking up...
I don't think assisted suicide is legal anywhere in the United States.
I think assisted suicide would fall under AIDS, helping, and then it's illegal to aid.
Alright, so to lighten the mood a little bit, we've already talked about 420 and drug addiction and assisted suicide, so we might as well talk about LSD, specifically what yesterday was, which was 4/19, Bicycle Day. And Bicycle Day in 1947 was the first ever LSD trip. And are you familiar with that story, or at least a version of it? So the one that I originally heard was there was a scientist who created it and got on his bicycle and rode his bicycle for 48 hours straight. After further research, I found out that that's not true, but it is still a pretty cool story. It all goes back to Albert Hofmann. And Hofmann was born in Switzerland, joined the pharmaceutical chemical department of Sandoz Laboratories located in Basel, and as a co-worker with Professor Arthur Stoll, founder and director of the pharmaceutical department. He began studying the medical plant squill and the fungus ergot as part of a program to purify and synthesize active constituents used as pharmaceuticals. His main contribution was to elucidate the chemical structure of the common nucleus of silica cosides, an active principle of Mediterranean squill. While researching lysergic acid derivatives, Hofmann first synthesized LSD on November 16, 1938. The main intention of the synthesis was to obtain a respiratory and circulatory stimulant, an analeptic. It was set aside for 5 years until April 16, 1943, which is actually Bicycle Day. 4/19 got coined as Bicycle Day for different reasons. So when Hofmann decided to take a second look at it while resynthesizing LSD, he accidentally absorbed a small amount of the drug and discovered its powerful effects. He described what he felt as being affected by a remarkable restlessness combined with a slight dizziness. At home, I lay down and sank into a not unpleasant intoxicated-like condition, characterized by an extremely stimulated imagination and a dreamlike state. With eyes closed, I found the daylight to be unpleasantly glaring. I perceived an uninterrupted stream of fantastic pictures, extraordinary shapes with intense kaleidoscope play of colors. After about 2 hours, this condition faded away, he quotes. Yeah, that sounds about right. Sounds like LSD. They call it Bicycle Day because on April 19th, 1943, Hofmann then ingested 0.25 milligrams, 250 micrograms of the substance. Less than 1 hour later, Hofmann experienced sudden and intense changes in perception. He asked his laboratory assistant to escort him home, as was customary in Basel. They made the journey by bike. On the way, Hoffman's condition rapidly deteriorated as he struggled with feelings of anxiety, alternating in his beliefs that the next-door neighbor was a malevolent witch, that he was going insane, and that the LSD had poisoned him. When the house doctor arrived, however, he could not detect no physical abnormalities, save for a pair of incredibly dilated pupils. Hoffman was reassured, and soon his terror began to give way to a sense of good fortune and enjoyment, as he later wrote, "Little by little I could begin to enjoy the unprecedented colors and plays of shapes that persisted behind my closed eyes. Kaleidoscope fantastic images surged in on me, alternating, variating, opening and closing themselves in circles and spirals, exploding in colored fountains, rearranging and hybridizing themselves in constant flux. The events of the first LSD trip, now known as Bicycle Day, after the bicycle ride home, proved to Hoffman that he had indeed made a significant discovery. A psychoactive substance with extraordinary potency, capable of causing significant shifts of consciousness in incredibly low doses. Hoffman foresaw the drug as a powerful psychiatric tool because of its intense and introspective nature. He couldn't imagine anyone using it recreationally. Bicycle Day is increasingly observed in psychedelic communities as a day to celebrate the discovery of LSD. Even though the first actual discovery, the first time it was ever taken was April 16th, and it was invented 5 years prior. And the way that 419 got officially declared Bicycle Day was because the celebration of Bicycle Day originated in DeKalb, Illinois. In 1985, when Thomas B. Roberts, then a professor at Northern Illinois University, invented the name Bicycle Day, when he founded the first celebration at his home. Several years later, he sent an announcement made by one of his students to friends in the internet list, thus propagating the idea and the celebration. His original intent was to commemorate Hoffman's original accidental exposure on April 16th, but the date fell midweek and was not a good time for the party, so he chose the 19th to honor Hoffman's first intentional exposure. That means that a professor at Northern Illinois University got his students together, threw a party to all take LSD to celebrate LSD's invention, and that happened in the 80s. A college professor deemed it Bicycle Day while starting a party for him and his students to trip on LSD base, and that's pretty rad.
Those kids.
And the only reason that April 16th isn't deemed Bicycle Day or the day that the first LSD trip happened was because the fucking 16th was the middle of the week and they wanted to have the party on a weekend. And since 419 just so happened to happen on the weekend, they found it more reasonable to deem it Bicycle Day due to the amount of LSD he really did take that day at a higher dose of 250 micrograms, and then rode his bicycle home where he freaked out, had the first bad trip ever, most likely. Probably not the first. Psychedelic mushrooms have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
But the first LSD bad trip.
What'd you learn today at school, Billy? Everything and nothing. Tired.
Also, LSD throughout the 40s and 50s after that was used medically, and
We blame that guy for Ted Kaczynski.
yeah, but it was used throughout the 50s, specifically by a doctor named Dr. Humphrey Osmond, who gave LSD to alcoholics in Alcoholics Anonymous who had failed to quit drinking. After 1 year, around 50% of the study group had not had a drink, a success rate that has never been duplicated by any other means. Bill Wilson, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, participated in medically supervised experiments on the effects of LSD on alcoholism and believed LSD could be the cure to alcoholics, or could be used to cure alcoholics. The last known LSD experiment pharmaceutically was in 2014. There was a push to bring LSD back to the pharmaceutical field, and 8 subjects received a full 200 microgram dose of LSD, while 4 others received 1/10 as much. Participants then took part in 2 LSD-assisted therapy sessions, 2 or 3 weeks apart. Subjects who took the full dose experienced subjects who took the full dose experienced reductions in anxiety averaging 20%, while those given the low dose reported becoming more anxious. When subjects taking the low dose were switched to the full dose, they too showed reduced anxiety, with the positive effects lasting for up to a year. The effects of the drug itself lasted for up to 10 hours, with participants talking to Dr. Gasser throughout the experience. These results indicate that when administered safely in a methodological, rigorous, medically supervised psychotherapeutic setting, LSD can reduce anxiety, the study concludes, suggesting that larger controlled studies are warranted. And that happened in 2014. Yeah, but yeah, and then it was the war on drugs during the 60s that basically made all of that legal. There probably could have been a lot more progression in the pharmaceutical field with drugs, but when the war on drugs happened during the 60s, and there was so much pushback, and it became such a touchy subject on what scientists could be messing with. Yeah, Nixon was behind the war on drugs. Reagan was behind the war on drugs. There's a couple other names that are thrown in there. John F. Kennedy, I'm pretty sure, had something to say about it all. Yeah, it's crazy. And LSD flashbacks are a legitimate, scientifically diagnosed phenomenon where you can actually build residual trauma from a trip that later on affects you without you even realizing, because it was an effect that your mind went through while you were on the drug. So by the time you woke up, you were just happy you were sober, or just, glad you made it through the night. And if it was a pretty good night, you look back on it as a pretty good night. There could have been so many different little thoughts and so many different little things that went through your head that people, like in long-time users and whatnot, and people who form almost schizophrenic effects from it afterwards, they often get what are called flashbacks. And people who I've talked to have experienced flashbacks, but I'm sure they're not like what these are like. You can have moments where all of a sudden you slip back into a mindset that you had while you were on that drug, not even realize it, because that's just now how your brain works. And those effects almost never go away. Like you can permanently change thought patterns within yourself with LSD consciously, and those things can come back and affect you every single day, mental health wise. A major form of it is acute panic reactions and psychotic crises, meaning, something little happens, but your paranoia gets the best of you, and all of a sudden it's something huge. Imagine it like that one night where we had all of those people at our house that were tripping, and there kept being all sorts of little tiny crises throughout the night. Imagine that, but that's just your life now, where like little stuff like that gets to you. Well, we talked about 420, talked about Bicycle Day, we talked about assisted suicide, we talked about rehab, we talked about jail. I guess the only it's been a crazy one, guys. We talked about marijuana on this wonderful 420. We've talked about assisted suicide. We've talked about a whole lot. And if you made it this far, I feel bad for you. But thank you. Thank you. It means we're doing something right if you got here. I think we're just gonna end it right there. Happy 420, everyone.